Welcome to your feedback. Please stay calm as the system feeds back terribly. That's ironically appropriate. Well, that was a bit different. One of the audio drivers must have been updated in some fashion, because it never used to feed back like that before. But it does now. Well, I suppose that's just timing as well, considering, but I will get into that in a moment. Welcome back again. Once again, folks, greetings, well met, salutations, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, whatever it is, wherever you are. Yeah, hello, welcome back again. Another edition of Excalibre, 4 minutes past, that's probably one of the later starts. On this moon day evening, 29th of the 7th, 2019. It's been lovely and warm again today. I had lots of sun and I'm knackered because I've been walking too much and trying to get too much done. Yeah, but sometimes you got to, so things to do. So, in light of the fact that this is the last Hangouts on Air that I'm going to be doing, that we'll be doing on Reality Chat, because obviously normally that's on Wednesday night, but we're both going to be away Wednesday, and Wednesday would have been the 31st, which is the last night of the Hangouts on Air, because they're finishing it at the end of this month. So since it is the last one, and this is episode 27, I mentioned this last week, so in effect, in a kind of meta fashion, this is this way of doing the Excalibre broadcasts using the Hangouts on Air function on YouTube is joining the 27 club. It will be no more after this episode. So this is the swan song, the rehab swan song. You know, before they always go off into rehab and then they come out again and they say they're going to sort their shit out, and then all of a sudden they pop their clogs at 27. Yeah. This is that moment where you're going into the rehab before you go off and wait for your ticket to join the 27 ferry, carry you across the sticks. Hello to everyone in the chat room. Alan McVicker, hello. And Apple Charlotte, I'm just going to say Apple Charlotte because I'm crap at pronouncing German stuff. So Apple Charlotte, hello. Lynn Anderson, hello. And Dave Iron, hello. Stewie, hello, hello. Scrolling down, Stephen Owens, hello. Ooh, the chat box is jumping around a bit. It's just lag because it's catching up, but it means all of a sudden you just get a whole lot of text appear in the box. Stephen Owens, hello. Gypsy Soul, hello. Reality Chat, no, he's in the room. That's confusing. But yeah, no major thread really to speak about this week. If you've been watching the general happenings, you know, as I do, keeping an eye on the news and various stuff that's going on and the alternative independent media, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, if you're taking at least some time to try and be aware of things going on in the world and that kind of interest, then you're probably quite aware of a lot of the craziness that's happened over the last week. There's been plenty of it in the last few weeks. I think it's that Phoenix effect. Now we've got the Bojo clown, not the camera, the Bojo clown in UK Parliament in number 10. The UK is now operated by a BJ for PM. That's what every PM wants, isn't it? But yeah, it has become quite crazy, and we've had some intense weather over this week, from extreme heat to heavy storms with a massive amount of thunder strikes, lightning strikes, I should say. I got thunder on the brain simply because when I was watching it, there wasn't as much thunder as there should have been, seemingly. It was a lot of high altitude lightning, that's why. But yes, it's been somewhat of a crazy week. And being the last time we can do this, I thought I don't want to really stress or emphasize like I do where I end up monologuing for an hour over a belabored point about something obscure in the news. We're just going to chat in general and talk about how a lot of this stuff has progressed over the last several years and where we are now. The ridiculous level that it's become now. We've been talking about a lot of these things for several years, since several years ago. And a lot of the things we've been talking about, like forewarning of, now is starting to happen. It's becoming obvious to most people now, or certainly a lot more people than ever used to bother taking any notice. So talking about that kind of stuff and thinking about that just had me thinking of the principle of infantilism that the system utilizes in so many ways. Oh, thunderstorms predicted for Wednesday. Oh, cool. I enjoy the thunderstorms. I like the rain. The infantilism that the system utilizes in many different ways to try and manipulate people and to dominate the majority of people, because they do dominate them, whether the people like to admit that or not. Nobody likes to admit being fooled or being foolish, or being duped into something. People don't like to be duped. So many people have said it in the past. When you tell somebody a truth, they get upset with you in various different ways. If you're going to tell somebody the truth, have a foot in the saddle, or a foot in the stirrup, I should say, ready to jump on your horse so you can ride away, because they're going to be seriously pissed off at the truth you've just told them. You're a poo-poo head. Ah. Yeah, but that's just a silly version of it. But there has been a deliberate process utilized by, I call it the system. People can get over their difficulty with dealing with generalized names like that, or generalized terms. So you get the idea that's being referred to. You've just been annoyingly semantic about who do you mean the system? Who are they? It's, you want a list of names? There's lists out there that you can look at if you want to. There's plenty of people who'll step forward and say, I could tell you who it is who's in charge. I know all the names. I've got the lists. But how can you as an individual in your position in life, whatever that is, how can you prove that to yourself? How can you find confirmation of that? You'll find it difficult to get that kind of 100% confirmation that you may feel that you want, or you feel that you need to actually admit to yourself what the fuck this thing is that you're looking at. Because that's what it really comes down to. People want specific details because the suggestion that there is this thing that dominates you and deliberately manipulates your life so that it can exploit you through your lifetime and discard you when it's had enough, when it's fed itself from you, or you are too much trouble for it, therefore it just needs you out of the way. That realization for the majority of people is so unpleasant that they will pick and they will pick and they will dig and they will dig and they will look, I need more confirmation, I need more confirmation, I need more confirmation, because this is so horrid, this is so extreme that I don't want to accept it. And I've said a few times over the years, it's good to be proven wrong, because sometimes some of the stuff I talk about is projections into possibilities and potentialities. Because the reason I do that is the idea being that if you can help somebody see that the direction they're going is going to be off at the edge of a cliff, then if you can help them see their poor footing or poor choice of navigation, hopefully they can change their course and things can be different. That potentiality will change because the causal links from now, from the moment now to that possibility are going to alter. So you want to change the potential dystopian, horrific nightmare world that we're potentially heading towards, then you need to change what you're doing with your energy so that you're not led that direction. Because most of the time that's what's going on. People are getting led or nudged. That connects the other thing that I put in the kind of subtitle in the info box, Mindspace. This was a project that the UK government have been running for a while now, for several years, as far as I remember. And the Mindspace project is primarily about, as they call it themselves, something like behavioral modeling and behavioral modalities and how to influence them. In other words, how to influence your behavior, how to make you do what they want you to do. And that's primarily what the Mindspace project is about. But Mindspace as project as a catch-all genre that the government wanted to address is part of the mental health issue that they've been bringing to the table for several years now. They've made it as one big package. Mindspace was meant to be that kind of like research area into, well, how do we interact with people in such a way that we don't make them feel that we're trying to oppress them? How could I stab you in such a way that you actually enjoy me stabbing you? Yeah, that kind of stupid shit. Very much Tavistock style. But anyway, the two connecting together. The system uses infantilism in many ways, partly in a kind of peer pressure effect and methodology where they will encourage biases in people. They will encourage stereotypes like the classic divide and conquer or divide and rule, racism, gender politics, that's a big one at the moment. Ageism, the old people are useless, they don't know what's going on. The young kids, the new generation, they're going to solve out all the problems. Just getting two sides and making them think the other side is shit, so they want to compete, or they think they're better than, blue eyes and brown eyes, if you've ever heard of that experiment that was done a long time ago. Anyway, but the infantilism also comes in other ways, such as the education system. Unless you go in, even in this sense, unless you go into higher education, the standard education you get through the schooling system in the UK is not really education in any way at all. It's indoctrination. It is enforced memorization. On the whole, the majority of it. Yes, there's a few bits here and there. There's a few subjects where you could say, well, they're allowed, creative freedom and to express their own selves and their opinions, their ideas, their hopes and dreams. Even that is corralled if you actually look into it further. But in general, they give you just enough. I can't remember who it was who said this. Just enough so you know how to press the buttons, how to pull the levers, how to clock in your paycheck and stuff like that. They give you just enough to get by in the system that they've encouraged us to build, that is there to be the engine room of the pyramidal structure, which keeps pushing the top higher and making the bottom squish down further and further.
It was George Carlin, Cookie. Sorry.
George Carlin.
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah. I interrupt you there. Sorry.
Yeah, I remember now. I remember the clip.
Just keeping you around, just keeping you in that little, just to know enough.
I think,
don't want you,
Sorry, I was going to say, I think he was in a way paraphrasing Mencken. I think he was he American? 1920 something. Anyway, Mencken said along the lines of the education system is meant to keep people stupid, so that they can't figure out how much money or how shit their government is, basically. The educated man is a dangerous man because he can figure out how the government is doing him over, basically.
They don't want empowered people, basically. They don't want people to be empowered, like an empowered, you know, a group of people sitting around a table or whatever, a family, anything. They're trying to
Yeah.
destroy all of that on
They,
every level.
they
You know?
want you to be children.
Yeah.
And this is why, like I say, the two things may seem separate, the way I put them in the info box. You know, they might look like they're completely separate statements, but you know what I'm like, things have a thread. Yeah. It's
Yes.
stealing from children. They want you to be like children so that they can have a justification. I'm doing it with parentheses, with bunny ears, you know, a justification that they are there to care for you, that duty of care that they like to bring forward, you know, because you are such silly children that you need to be cared for. Now, a really important caveat with this, I'm not trying to suggest that people in a situation such as myself, where you are reliant on a, a financial stipend from governmental institutions to carry on living, yeah, unless of course you choose to do something else. As Gary's pointed out many times before, you know, his lifestyle doesn't require that kind of connection with his government wherever he is. And obviously, of course, people go to work and stuff like that. But the reason, the caveat I'm trying to make here is I'm not trying to suggest that because people are connected to a government system in that fashion, that they require help, as the government likes to call it. That means that you are a child that is stupidly stuck in this position of being connected to this government thing. Please leave that to one side. Yes, there are some people that desperately need help because they cannot look after themselves for one reason or another. You could argue that they are kept in a state of childlike existence because they need that care. But I can and I would and I will and I do also argue that this system claims to be there for our service. It claims that they are our servants. The Queen is a figurehead of our power. All the people of this nation, supposedly, your power is focused through that icon that we call the monarchistic system, which at the moment is a queen. You know, when she dies, it's going to be a king. But the point being, that is a representative thing. It is not a reality. Yet they constantly teach people or give them the impression through plausible deniability of, oh, well, we never directly told you that that's the way it was. We just constantly give you this saturation of impression that, well, it's the Queen that's in charge, not you. You're just a citizen. You're a subject. Whereas the reality is the Queen would not be the Queen if it wasn't for the power of each and every subject. And it is only by the agreed, consensual, communal coming together of all those separate individuals that the power is created that is then supposedly invested through that system. So long argument round, sorry. My point being, with what is meant to be just a caveat originally, I'm not suggesting that because people have an interaction with their government, that means that they have been put into some kind of servitude or state of being a ward of the state that therefore creates the problem or further fuels the problem. No. You have every right to claim what is yours from the government because the government is your servant. They are there in your service. They are there, supposedly, to take care of all the stuff that belongs to all of us. So all those bits of common land that over the centuries they enclosed and took and enclosed and took, and they nibbled and nibbled and nibbled it away from the people until it's all supposedly private land. It's all owned by the Queen. The Crown Estate owns everything, don't you know? Supposedly. A lot of that is for judicial reasons, bureaucratic reasons, more than any actual reality that they own this geographical landmass. They don't. They're just janitors. That was the idea of government, of that kind of rulership, that kind of governance, really, I should say, is that it's like a janitorial service. They are meant to be servants. So in that respect, as far as I'm concerned, and I feel this is a provable fact if you bother to mooch through the information long enough and smear away the deliberate misdirections and propaganda, what they constantly tell us are benefits. This is just one example. Benefits are not benefits, they are entitlements. If you are a citizen, a subject of this monarchistic nation, then you are entitled to those payouts. Yeah, and then we get into the kind of shit, the nitpicky shit of, well, the government says you're only allowed to have this much, and their experts are deliberately, mealy-mouthed writing the requirements so that supposedly you can survive on a tin of beans and a loaf of bread a week and shit like that. Yeah, supposedly severely disabled people like paraplegics can go and get a job. Yeah, shit like that. That's that kind of nitpicky political shit of how there has been this tipping point many, many years ago, centuries ago, where the general populace have been convinced that they're not the ones with the power. The power is these few people that sit in important jobs like Boris, where supposedly we had a choice and a participation in granting him that power by voting for him, but you didn't vote for him, did you? And the more you look at this shit about politics and so-called democracy, the Brexit bullshit, are you starting to realise how that so-called voting system is all just part of this infantilized deception? You're a child. You don't know enough. You can't comprehend enough to be able to figure this shit out. Just let us look after you. You go back to sleep. Go back to work. Watch your TV. Buy your junk food. Chop your dick off and become a girl. All that shit is for you.
I think the other thing to point out, Cookie, is the trust. We trust them too much.
Yes.
The majority of people have, like you say, we give them the responsibility to do these things.
Yeah.
To run the systems, the country, and whatever. And
I'm glad you said that, because it's reminded me one of the main points about why I put that in as a subtitle: stealing from children. Like I said earlier, because of the various silliness that's been going on, we got Bojo in office and all that kind of shit. And I was thinking, like, how else, what other kind of metaphor? Like I did the other week with the idea about Gayland. I'm trying to think of other metaphors and analogies to get a point across that maybe hasn't been said before or mentioned before. But it made me think about, well, how can I explain to people that the majority of the people that are up there in those positions, the vast majority, yes, there's some good people, but they tend to get weeded out before they get high enough up the pyramid of power. So there are no good people right up at the top. I'm sorry, there just isn't. They would not be allowed to survive. Yeah, that's it, full stop.
They would eat you up and kill you off, wouldn't they? If you
how to get across to people that they are not your friends. They don't really care about you when they get that high up. What they're actually after is power in one form or another. And it just made me think, combined with that idea of keeping people in a childlike state of mind and situation, then in effect they are making us all children, and then they come along and steal from us. So they are the kind of personalities that happily steal from children. I was hoping that would sort of, connect with people a little bit more. Just imagine that situation in your head of some obnoxious personality like Bojo stealing from a child. I mean, you might have seen that video clip of him doing rugby with the school kids, and he gives that one kid a serious tackle. And he's a grown man playing rugby with kids, and yet he feels a need to be so, winning at his PR job that he potentially nearly injures a child. It's like, what are you doing, mate? You're a grown adult. That's a kid. Yeah, let them win. So what? You look a twat. So what? Yeah, but the idea of these people are the kind of people that will happily steal from children, and they keep you all in a childlike state. So they're stealing from you, and then connecting that to mindspace, and just giving the opportunity to mention mindspace connected with the whole mental health agenda. This is part of the the process of them cementing that deception that the power comes from the top down, when it doesn't. The top does not exist without the foundation. There can be no roof of the house without the foundational level. So they're not there without the rest of us being down here in their pyramidal system. So because of that, part of that deception is they want people to truly accept and absorb and internalize that idea that they are kind of like a parent, a pseudo parent, or like the old idea of kings and queens, they are that kind of overbearing, dominant monarch. They're in charge. They're daddy of the household, and the household might be the size of a country, but they're daddy. You know, and what daddy says goes, and that's it, full stop. That they have been weaving in this mental health agenda. Really, it's part of Agenda 21, 2030 as well in many ways, but this is to convince people that you have some kind of issue. You have some kind of mental problem. We now have so many different categories that we can give to you, these collections, these anachronisms, and anacronyms, these collections of letters that we can just throw at you, and they stick on you, and then for the rest of your life, you've got this stigma based on this label, and you have these restrictions in your life based on this label. No, most of it is the kind of things that before the rise of the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, that I think is now in number 5, and this is like the one that includes, you know, it's just bloated. Now they're just coming up with whatever. It's like, oh, he scratches his eyebrow every 5 minutes, therefore he's this condition. You know, that is literally what they're doing. They are itemizing behaviors and habits and mannerisms and thinking patterns and trying to figure out whether they can stick a label on it so that they can add it in the DSM and then give it to you, and then they can start feeding you pills, and at the same time they can write you in as a ward of the state because they have this condition, therefore they cannot look after themselves, so you lose this right, you lose this right, you lose this right, you lose this right. They are slowly trying to shift people from educated democracy, where a lot of the public, you know, maybe I'm going back a bit too far, like 100, 200 years, a lot of the public may not necessarily have been landowners, but they were free men in one form or another. And that doesn't mean just men, you know, they included women as well, even though they couldn't vote and stuff like that. They were still considered free peoples. Whereas if they can convince you that you have these conditions or that these labels apply to you, then you lose an immense amount of your rights of freedom in the nation, in the country that you live in, because they take them away from you, basically, because they say, oh, you suffer from this, therefore, you know, we've got to look after you. Our duty of care says we have to do this. At the same time, it erodes any genuine democracy that may exist, even if that is just on a localized sense, where people chatting in a pub or in the town hall or whatever say, well, do you think, seeing what's going on down there, and they're doing this and they're doing that, and so, oh, we should vote the councillors out and get new councillors in, and we should protest them and vote them to, you know, lobby them to do this, that and the other. You know, in other words, people on the ground taking part in activities, even though those political, but they are actively putting their energy into creating effects within their community, within their society. Yeah, that's, to me, that's genuine democracy. Because the people who want to take part willingly put their energy into it. But what they're trying to shift us into is a technocratic socialism where you'll just be required to press a button on a screen. Yeah, like the modern voting systems now, where it's electronic voting systems. You know, you'll just have to press a coloured icon on the screen. And if you see one that's bright and sparkly, because of the visual glamour effects that screens have on people, yeah, a lot of people just, oh yeah, I like the look of that logo. I like the animation on that one. I'll vote for that one. And they're reducing and reducing and reducing the general education level of most people, so that the very idea of a democracy is impossible. because the only way to truly have a democracy is you have to have 100% educated and aware population. Because if you're going to ask them to vote on important issues, like democracy supposedly does, then they need to know what the fuck they're voting on. And they need to have a working brain so that they can take the information and consider it for themselves and make a decision of, well, I vote that side or I vote that side based on all this stuff I'm looking at, which means they need to be truly educated, not indoctrinated, educated. Then you can have a genuine democracy. But if you keep dumbing them down, infantilizing them, and reducing the influence of their votes such that they pretty much give up because they can't be asked because nothing seems to happen no matter what they vote for, you ain't got democracy. That's utter bullshit. It's totally impossible. It will not do anything. So this, sorry, I'm just
go on.
explaining. So this shifting based on the mental health categorization, if you haven't noticed, for the past several years, certainly in the UK, and I know this is true in other nations, you know, in the USA and in Canada and whatever, they are saturating people with the idea of everyone's on the spectrum, everyone's got issues, you never know what your issue might be, why don't you go and get one today? And they make it sound like this is all based on that kind of victimhood psychology that they're using. Again, that's a infantilism. Because by trapping people into that victimhood mentality, they are infantilizing them to be in need of reliance on their service, on the government being there to care for them. So that psychological manipulation, it's happening a lot. Certainly in the UK, in the USA and Canada, they are saturating people with that idea such that they're making it trendy. So people who genuinely have a problem are getting swamped by the people that they might be a bit quirky, but they don't need a label just because they're a bit quirky. Even saying they're a bit quirky is a label, you know. So he's a bit eccentric. That's what we used to say. He was a bit eccentric, or he's a bit grumpy, or he's a bit twitchy. You know, he's got a bit of a twitch or something from some, you know, from wherever. Whereas now everything has to be individuated and labeled, and you score credit value, you score social credit value by how many labels you can list. I've got this, and 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 I've got this. That means I'm superior to you. Look at all the labels I've got. They're like badges of war that you see the generals wearing, you know, the stripes. That represents all the different battles they've been in, you know, and that's what they're encouraging people into. That means eventually they're going to get to the stage where they won't bother asking people to participate in voting because they won't need to know, because they'll tell you that they already know what you'd vote, because the AI has looked at what you do online, looked at your social media impact, looked at your internet footprint based on where you shop and how you spend and who you talk to and who you don't talk to. That, combined with your medical records, combined with your governmental records, your educational records, etc., 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 means they know you would vote Labour. So they've already done it for you. Convenient, isn't it? You want the ultimate convenience. Yeah, paying by phone wasn't fast enough, so now they're encouraging you to inject it in you and have, you know, just wave your hand as you go out the shop. Bye, mate. I took some stuff off the shelf. Yeah, can you read my chip? In me read what? You can't read anything. That's probably because I ain't got a chip, mate. See ya. That's probably going to start happening soon. There'll be like flash mobs of people, you know, shoplifting, just saying, "Oh, your reader must be bust, mate. Your reader can't read me chip." I shouldn't have suggested that. It's going to start a craze. Sorry, I was ranting a lot, but trying to make that point about how they're offering. You know, this is where it connects to the mind space, where they're looking at how to behaviorally manipulate you, to manipulate your behavior, to nudge you in certain directions without you feeling or thinking that that is what is going on, that the government is pushing you in a certain direction. So instead, you have to just, you know, in general life, you just suddenly think, oh, I think I might be ODD. Maybe I should go and get myself a label. I could have a new shirt with a label on, so I'm ODD. You know, shit like that. It's subtle. a lot of the time. Sometimes it's overt and in your face because it's just so fucking ridiculous. But it's also very subtle, and it's continuous saturation. And the more they push us into that deluded belief that you have some kind of condition, because the placebo effect can often cause a lot of problems for people. You convince them enough. You know, you keep telling somebody they got a bad leg for year after year after year after year. Eventually they start limping. You know, not everyone succumbs to that kind of influence, but many people do. The majority do. If you want an example of that, look at things like the placebo effect, and look at people like Derren Brown, who seem to have a good knack at influencing people to do things that they wouldn't normally do. So the mind space is relevant in that sense. You know, that's why I picked that in particular to talk about the kind of mental health stuff. Yeah. Sorry, I've been ranting again. We're supposed to be talking about the fact it's the last show.
No, I was going to say, Cookie, just to sort of add to what you were saying a little bit. I was just thinking the fact that, you know, the desensitization of us, you know, like human life is like worth the sacrifice for the, you know, the corporate and political gain. We see that over time. You know, remember Madeleine Albright, the Secretary of State back in 2001, the US, the first female Secretary of State or whatever. And she actually said that when they said there's over 500,000, I think, Iraqi children had died. And she said, we think that price was worth paying.
Yeah.
So this is what we're dealing with.
That's how many children the machine needed to carry on turning that year.
Yeah. So this need for still human sacrifice, and the amount of killing that goes on the planet in general every day, you know, in the sense of how we are with each other as humanity is. Yeah. And that's the first thing we've got to stop doing. I said this right from the start, right from 2011. You've got to stop killing each other first, and then we can worry about everything else. Yeah. Everything else will fall into place then. Once we stop fucking killing each other, we'll sort things out properly. But it's this need to have there's aggressors and to create this almost dark world we live in, you know, where it's just this type of stuff that is, like I say, death, just nothing. Human life means nothing to them, you know, nothing at all. And like I say, that's the change we need to see. That's what needs to happen first. And then we've got some sort of chance to save the animals as well. But it all comes with your own growth in your own, you know, knowing and all the good stuff, you know, you get
that's absolutely key to it, and it begins with yourself.
Yes.
And a lot of it, I don't want to say all of it, because there's going to be elements where you're interacting with other people and also where you benefit from the help of other people and stuff like that. So it's not all of it, but the vast majority of it is down to you. You have to do this stuff for yourself, because you know, as I say, it's good to get help from people, but there's certain parts of this process, some of the realizations are internal. You know, you need to have these realizations. You need to develop gnosis of these things. Often people only start this pathway, a little bit similar for me myself. You know, you start this pathway because shit has happened in your life, and it's made you go, whoa, hang on a minute, what the fuck? What's going on here? And you start questioning a bit more and thinking a bit more, and you begin this process. Some people call it tumbling down the rabbit hole, but I disagree. It's not tumbling down the rabbit hole. It's shedding boxes. That's what you begin doing. It's like the ever-opening lotus flower. Yeah, you crack open the one shell of that flower, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, this is new. Well, I didn't realize this bit, and then another one opens, and another one opens, and it's a continuing process. But you have to begin it and pursue it yourself. Nobody else can step in your head and do it for you. And anyone that claims that they can, who claims that they're the one that will teach you the secrets of how to do it, and they've got the magic words and the spells to do it, and they're trying to rip you off in some fashion, or they themselves are deluded into thinking that they have some kind of magic power. You can't get it from somebody else. Yes, you can get lots of help, lots of signposts and directions and stuff like that, but you can't take it from anyone else. And when you encounter You know, I've thought about this the other day because I've seen it a lot again recently, and I think it's combined with this new surge towards the next lot of elections that they've pushed out there. Because, you know, as mentioned over the last few weeks, there's been a few things recently where, to me anyway, it seems like there's an atmosphere of psyops and agents and shit like that. There's certain talking points and certain rhetoric that keeps being put in front of people deliberately, like bait, like bits of cheese. They want you to follow the trail of candy. You know, so, oh, piece of candy, oh, piece of candy, and then they turn around and tell you, oh, you're in that zone now. You know, that kind of shit. But when people come at you with the kind of attitude of like, oh, well, who is in charge? Who are they? Like I was talking about earlier. So, what do you mean when you say they? You're obviously not thinking for yourself, because if you were thinking for yourself, you'd already have some idea on who you think they are. What you're asking for is for me to be your leader. You're asking me to dictate to you who they are, like a professor in a lecture hall. You're asking me to sit right on the board and go, they are this one and this one and this one and this one. Write it down in your textbooks. There'll be a test at the end of the day. You know, why are you doing that? Why are you yet again giving away your authority to somebody else?
Because people like Tommy Robinson have taught them that you go to leaders to have them tell you who to hate. Yeah. Because it's so easy. Because actually, that is about the lowest mental position you can start from. And it's a long way up from there. Yeah. I mean, there's people that are following Tommy Robinson. They're a whole step ladder away from working on themselves. But I think they're always going to need a leader. And in that way, it's, you know, people who can, like, I can't name anybody really except Max Igan. You know, people like Max Igan have to stand up there and say, okay, I'll lead you for a year. Just listen to me, and then, you know, try and do a bit of research. But there have to be some leaders, I think, and they've got to be self-sacrificing people.
I agree with you, mate. It is a bit. Sorry, went down both holes at once. There is a stereotyping effect that's been applied to the concept of leadership. And it's similar to a lot of things recently. They've tried to create, I call it the politically correct dictionary, but most people think that means that it's just a bunch of words that you're not allowed to use anymore. So, you know, you get prosecuted if you say certain words and whatever. That's not really what it's about. It's about misdirecting the meaning of a word, twisting the meaning of a word, even completely inverting it so it means the opposite. You know, things like that. To leadership itself, they're quite happy for there to be this disjointed effect of people think you either have to have a leader or it's complete chaotic destruction of everything they've ever known and they're all going to die. That's not a reality either. It's also not a reality that you have zero leadership in your life. We all have leaders of various forms in one way or another. When you're a little kid, your leaders are your parents. You know, they're in charge. They're the ones that say what's going to happen and stuff like that. You might get asked if you'd like to go to one park or the other one, but the parents are the ones deciding to take you to the park. Yeah, they're leading. Leadership is not necessarily a bad thing. That's basically what I'm trying to say. Leadership can be immensely beneficial to us. We're social animals. We work better in groups. We get more done in groups. We achieve more en masse. You know, we can build bigger things when we work together en masse. So having leaders in the right situation is immensely beneficial. But they've tarnished the idea, the very concept of leadership. They've turned it into this dirty word where either you're totally on board with their political ideology and accept that their leaders are good because you obey leadership. You believe in, you're waving the flag in my head. You believe in the monarchy. Or you must be one of those people that's totally against and think that just the very concept of leadership is like a turd on your shoe.
It's a fine line between a dictator and a leader. isn't it? I suppose.
Yeah.
And, you know, in that sense.
One man's rebel is another man's freedom fighter. You know, which side of that argument? The problem with that is you've got a dualistic argument that's been created to you by a bunch. I was going to say a bunch of people, but by a system that is using that very Hegelian process to manipulate you. So leadership is not a bad thing. Bad leaders are a reality. That's probably a better way of saying it. You know, the concept and the usefulness of the methodology of leadership is a good thing, but you get bad leaders who abuse the position that they're put into by the group of people that say, we want a leader to do this. You know, we want to climb over that mountain range. You know the most about hiking in mountain ranges. You lead us. And then he takes them off to Timbuktu somewhere and sells them into slavery. They're like, this isn't leading us over the mountain. Well, leadership is terrible. They're trying to force us into one side or the other. A simplistic, black and white, dualistic thinking process that means that they can just throw us against each other.
Yeah, and press the buttons as you do it. Press the apps as you do it, because they'll help you, because they're dead easy to use, don't you know?
And just even saying the word leadership, it's a trigger word now because of that programming. And that programming, like I was talking about earlier, you know, it's, a lot of the time they won't say it to you directly. It's just constantly implied, reinforced, suggested. You know, in your general education, in the society in general, in your media, in your news, is a constant implied meaning. You know, leadership means somebody like Bojo, and you either agree with him and support him, or you must be one of those people that think leadership is a dirty word. You know, there is no accepted common sense to the whole situation. I mean, politics is probably a bad example for that when talking about common sense. But I think you get the idea. I'm beating a dead horse. I mean, to sadism, necrophilia and bestiality, but am I just flogging a dead horse? Yeah, but it's like a lot of the Tory MPs, you know.
But it's constant manipulation, as you said before, the mindspace stuff you were on about. The competition, the fear, power through fear. You know, it's through fear that they get most of this stuff achieved generally.
Avarice. I mean, I do agree. I suppose you say avarice it stems from fear. You know, fear of lack and a fear of being ostracized and stuff like that. But they've encouraged avaricious mentality. So people have that need to accumulate. So you get the kind of competition, you know, the keeping up with the Joneses stuff. All that kind of stuff is really based on fear. And that fear is only alleviated when people work on themselves. And hopefully you get to the kind of realization where you sit there and think, well, you know, I get on with my neighbor. And I think it's nice that they've got so-and-so in their garden. I don't feel a need to go out and buy a bigger version of what they've got in their garden just so I can, you know, show off how wealthy I am. You know, shit like that. That requires inner work. The system can't do that for you, or the people can't do that for you.
Well, that other thing is like people are frightened of what other people will think of them, what people think. It's like that's the first thing you lose when you start to get in touch with yourself correctly. You don't care about that so much. You know, you get on with your life and what you're meant to be doing and get on the right track and get into alignment properly and get on with it. You know, it's like, you know, that's a big holdback for people, and that's what keeps up with the Joneses and all that stuff. You know, it's what people think of me or whatever. And it's a very deep program that's run right through, you know, your very early years, right into your teens and your, you know, right through. It's manipulated and controlled
up to today, Peter. Because the synchronicity, Jordan Peterson put this up just the other day. It's from his Auckland talk, the 4 fundamental fears. People fear what others are going to think about them. It's only 2.5 minutes long, but it's worth going through it because this guy is talking about the same fears we're talking about, but of course his answer is wrong. We have to trust in authority, you know, and we have to conform to the group. And the programming this guy comes out with, and he sounds so logical. Yeah, so it's worth listening to the other side, how they continuing to push the same programming, and they didn't put it in your face. They're telling you, we are working and manipulating on your fears, and this is what to do about it. I mean,
that's another good example as well. in that system of them keeping you childlike, a child hasn't really had the experience of life yet where they have the realization that life has ups and downs. Sometimes you'll be down, sometimes you'll fall over, but you get back up again. Eventually you'll be having fun again, you'll be running around again. And part of the childhood learning process is learning that kind of thing. Yeah, you're chasing your mates along and you fall over, you hurt your knee, you cry for a bit, you get your mum to kiss you boo-boo better, and then you get up and you're running around with your mates again. You know, it's that kind of learning process.
No, they won't be allowed to, Cookie, because if they haven't been vaccinated, that won't happen.
No. You won't be allowed out. You'll just be in your box with the screen in front of your face.
Exactly, yeah.
But they don't want people to have that balanced point of view on life, where you know it's not going to be all roses and chocolates, as the saying goes. You know, it's not going to be all fun fairs and unicorns farting cupcakes on rainbows. But that's the indoctrination that's going on at the moment. They're trying to push. Well, I think, you know, they've made quite a lot of headway in indoctrinating the newest generation. Even the millennial generation has suffered from it a lot. But we're back to that manipulation of fears disguised as caring for you. So stealing from children again. They're stealing the children's experience of life. They're also stealing the potential growth of their minds, of their spirits, because they're putting them into this position where they will never really experience reality. They will only ever be shown this Plato's cave, shadows on the wall version of reality that is these screens. And they'll be told that as long as they stay in there, they'll be safe and everything will always be happy, because the special authority, whether it be a policeman or a parent or a teacher or a politician, well, you know, in a child's mind, it's just the fact that it's an adult of authority. You know, they will always be there in the background to care for you and chase away the bullies and stuff like that. And that's going to breed, it already has. And I know this plays into a lot of the arguments that have been doing the rounds for a few years, but it comes back again to that victim mentality and people feeling so afraid and their fears being manipulated because they've been put into that position where they feel that as long as they stay in a certain place in the virtual world, they're in a safe zone, and they don't get the very kind of, or they don't seem to be able to conceive of the reality that has up and down. They are convincing themselves that reality only is ever an up, and it's not, and that will create unbalanced people. And that's where we end up with these sick people, breeding sick people.
Absolutely, that's spot on. That is, because that's so true. It keeps them in that heightened state, and when you're in reality, and that's why we've seen a rise of people always being the offended society now. You know, the young, you can't say that, you can't, or whatever, and they've created this like bubble for themselves where, like you say, they're always protected, but where they find their most comfort is with the screen, within that heightened state, within that, and they can't deal with the other, you know, real situations or, you know, social situations, things that we would just be completely okay with growing up, because we didn't have this thing called the internet, we didn't have the screens, we didn't have this type of technology. So we've seen both halves of that. You know, we've lived through both halves. But as a child growing through it, as you mentioned, the millennials, well, they actually outnumber us lot now. If you're over 40, 50, I think there's more of them now than there is of us. So, you know, that population is growing and growing and growing, but it's been grown into a techno world, which, you know, we're sitting here sort of criticizing what they've only known. So it's, you know, they see us as real, you know, oh, shut up, you know, but yeah, go on.
Personally, I do think, I don't know if anyone's done any theoretical studies into this. I know they have in some ways because of some of the studies that have been going on for the last few years, but I do think that for the latest generation in particular, the millennials as well will suffer from this, even though for the millennials, the internet back when they were little children, when they were small infants and toddlers, the internet wasn't quite as pervasive as it certainly is now. And it certainly was not as controlled and manipulative as it is now. Yes, you get the kind of sales stuff that would happen online long ago, but it wasn't this kind of insidious psychological manipulation deliberately to politicize you in one way or another and shit like that. No. But my point being is, like, even for them, they have grown up never knowing the world without the internet. For a lot of us, even from when you were a young child, you know, I had computers and whatever from when I was fairly young, teenager. But anyway, I'm thinking of my younger relatives. You know, they've never experienced life without the kind of computer technology that we have, fairly comparable to today, and the internet being somewhat comparable to how it is today. You know, within the last 20 years, millennials, they've never known the world without that. And for a lot of them, they've been introduced to it at a fairly early age, and it's been part of their life in one way or another. Either they're doing gaming on the computer, or they're doing stuff on the internet, or they're watching videos, or all the kind of stuff you can do with a computer connected to the internet. And for them, this is my kind of like theory and speculation, it's become like a sixth sense. And I've talked about this a few times before. You know, I do think that for a lot of them, certainly the latest generation, I see some of the smaller kids that just don't seem to be connected to where they are. They may be sat in the same room as you, but they're not there. Mentally, psychologically, energetically, they just don't seem to be there. And that's because they're so absorbed with whatever it is they're doing on their screen. To them, it is like a pocket dimension that new sense that they've created is connected into. That's why when a parent comes along and says like enough screen time and tries to take it off them, they go crazy. They have an episode of some kind. I do think it is becoming that way. People, when they're growing up, like I said, some of the millennials now in their 20s and whatever, 20 plus 30s even, they may be able to go through kind of like a withdrawal, you know, where you introduce them to the concept that, look, you can turn it off, you know, you don't have to have it on all the time. You can do other stuff without being connected. And maybe they can, you know, go through like a detox period. I shouldn't say maybe, I know they can, you know, it's just a matter of putting in the effort. But for the youngest generation, I think they're going to suffer psychologically if the internet connectivity is taken away from them.
Well, maybe short term, but not long term. One of the things you was talking about,
I think long term it will affect them.
There's this idea I've been forming that you was talking about kids that, you know, used to be able to let them run around, get hurt, and they'd learn from it, right? Now, one of the things that really drove me towards Ouspensky and Goethe doing the work on consciousness was all those years, 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old, when I was 18-year-old, a teenager, that I stood around feeling, you know, out of place and embarrassed and, you know, confused, and just a lot of kids today, you know, as soon as they start feeling that, they'll go for the fun. But to me, those years of suffering and feeling out of place and not having answers is part of the suffering that caused me to go and find something to look into, to search for answers. And they're not having that. They're just turning to their phones instead. Yeah, so they miss that embarrassment of being a teenager, which is horrible at the time, but it's a suffering that the long term leads you on to something better.
Yes, absolutely, mate. Definitely agree. And that's another. It's that externalization process again, because you're describing how you found it beneficial for working on yourself, and that's what people should get from that. Yeah, it's the opportunity to be working on yourself. But for a lot of the, it's not just the younger generation as well. There's a lot of people of many age, any age, can fall into this kind of, you know, this social media black hole that draws people in with that kind of effect, and they externalize themselves, and they're not doing the inner work on themselves. They might buy on their screen, they'll have a special logo on their avatar or something. They decorate their virtual self. They work on their virtual self. They don't do their own inner work. Yeah, they don't work on themselves. They're trying to live a completely different life. You know, you could add into that the kind of the psychological cloning effect with the celebrity culture, where, you know, people are encouraged. Again, it's one of those subliminal things where it's implied and it's constant saturation of this kind of attitude and effect, where you are expected to choose whichever particular celebrity you find the most affinity to, like an archetype, you know, a psychological archetype that you feel connected to, and then you should emulate that personality. So you get the same haircut, you buy the same clothes, you try even to live the same life. So, you know, you ask a lot of the younger people, what do you want to be? I want to be like so-and-so celebrity. So why don't you want to be yourself? Why don't you want to be famous in your own right? You know, if you really want that kind of fame and whatever, yeah, it made me choke just the concept that you want the fame. You know, if you really want that kind of thing, then why not be famous for yourself, not for emulating somebody else?
There are archetypal lifestyles now as well, like the Holiday Island lifestyle.
Yeah,
So,
the white picket fence.
Well, yeah, it's, you know, if you don't like one of the archetypal personalities, you can, you know, start living the I'm on Survivor Island lifestyle mentality. Yeah.
In the UK at the moment, I think that's Love Island.
Yeah.
Funny enough, I did write that down. Yeah, Love Island. Yeah, that's they're throwing out 2 seasons of that now per year, and each season lasts like months. So for like a good bit of the year, you've got this drivel and this awful stuff like you're talking about. You know, putting people together, picking and choosing who you're going to have sex with, and that seems to be the, you know, the thing everybody's into.
Yeah.
And yeah,
we might as well just put up some video cameras in a barn and pin up a sign saying free rutting session, and then just live stream it. And it's like, there you go, that's TV. And I know, I really, really know that sounds like, you know, oh, you're an old fuddy duddy. You just don't like people living and being like, you know, enjoying their lives. It's like, no, I've skirted the edge of the porn industry. I've seen what it's like. I've had limited interaction with it, and I'm glad I managed to get away from it eventually. You know, that experience alone fucked me up a fair bit, and not in the kind of euphemistic sense, but the total experience of that period of my life was what helped me get back on path. And I'm saying that not to be religious in any way. I'm not trying to apply any religious connotations. I'm not trying to say I'm born again. Oh, I went to see the devil and then I decided to choose Jesus and all that shit. I was watching one of the guys I've followed for years earlier today, and it's just like, mate, from years ago, I subscribed to you because you talked about philosophy and critical thinking and, you know, that kind of subject. And now you're ranting about being a born again Jesus worshipper and everybody in politics is a demon. I'm saying, wow, and see the kind of psychological manipulation that's going on in this environment. And there's been a bit of a upswell of that over the last several months, of like people finding God again. It's like the age of God again. All of a sudden, it's like, what? And I'm not atheist. People, you know, as well, please don't misinterpret what I'm saying here. I'm not saying I don't believe or have a faith in something. No, but there's a difference between just jumping on a bandwagon because you haven't really thought things through or spent any time thinking about stuff, and you just got this sense of impending chaos such that you are trying to cling to anything that says it's an order, because that's what all the religions are primarily about. Yeah, order, not chaos. The universe seems to be chaotic. When you're born into this reality, you don't know what the fuck it is or what's going on. as far as we can tell. You know, maybe little tiny babies, if you could read their mind, they'd be saying, "Oh, I'm back again. Yeah, great. Now this time I'm going to be a girl. Where?" You know, whatever. But you're born into this reality, not knowing what the fuck's going on and how to operate within this time-space experience. And gradually you learn sequences of order, methodologies of managing the seeming chaos. But really, the universe is not chaos. It's just that it is so complicated that to our limited abilities to comprehend what's going on, anything that we haven't figured out how it works is chaotic, seemingly. Yeah. So you're born into a universe of chaos, and over the growth of your life, you figure out patterns of order that enable you to navigate the chaos. So stuff grows in reality, stuff grows on the planet that you can ingest. But how long does it take you from being an infant to being able to gather food and cook your own meal? It takes quite a while of learning. And that learning process is you figuring out patterns of order that benefit you. Yeah. So people are rushing back to religions at the moment because they know that everything is getting so chaotic that it might be subconsciously, but it's scaring the shit out of them, and they feel a need to find a lifeboat to, you know, sail over that chaos.
And that lifeboat is their higher self, which they need to get in touch with a bit more. Rather
not
than,
a guy with a beard on a cloud wearing a dress.
It's like get in touch with that side and look into that sort of stuff, and look at, you know, the fact that as well, that, you know, those sorts of things wouldn't be happening if we taught the kids better. You know, they understood a bit more of themselves, and as we say, education is just designed to create the workers to only know so much information, to just press the buttons and do the job. You know, they don't want you don't want to know any good stuff about yourself and this sort of thing. And then they, as you get older, that if you are interested in that sort of thing, that's a genre they've created over there, which is full of crazies and mad people who are all over the place, you know. And that's the sort of, so you have to know, if you are spiritually inclined and want to do that kind of work, it's not easy. I can tell you, it's a tough one. But
that brings us back again to the Mindspace project and the push for mental health labeling.
Oh, well, yeah.
In effect, they want to stick a label on us all so that we can be itemized properly in their warehouse system. Yeah, because when I keep saying when, it's now that this stuff is happening. So as it progresses, as the technocracy rolls out, everything will be itemized like in a warehouse. Yeah, so everything, not only just you physically and your physical stuff, but also your mental processes, your personality type, your emotional concerns, whatever, everything will be itemized so that the system, the algorithms, whatever, the programs within the computer system will be able to then pass all that data and do its thing within the technocracy system.
Yeah. Incidentally, Cookie, when you just mentioned a little while ago, how long does it take to learn the different foods and be able to cook them for yourself? That is where the very concept of a leader is born. The person that we copy, the one that shows us this plant looks like this. You can eat it raw, or you got to put it on some, and you got to heat it. That is leadership.
Yeah.
So the leader is the one that's teaching you, and the school system.
That as well. That nicely joins us back to some of the stuff we was talking about earlier, because I think that's a good point of how leadership can be beneficial, but it can also be abused. Because in the same way as like what I was saying about kind of like the religious stuff, I'm not into organized religion, but that doesn't mean I don't have a faith in something. You know, people get picky about, well, what is it you do believe in, or whatever. You know, it's fairly long conversations, but the point being, the organized religions can be beneficial. In many ways, they are beneficial. But at the same time, it doesn't take a lot of thinking and internet searching to see how there's a whole lot of shit that comes along with it. Yeah. So if they're helpful to you, that's great. If you find a help from them, even if that's just a sense of well-being or a sense of order, me talking about finding order in the chaos, that's good. My main concern is that you don't fall into that mistake of attributing blind obedience to the leader of whatever institution or organization it is. So just because a guy stands at the end of the church beyond the altar wearing a dress and waving his symbols about doesn't mean that he really knows anything about what this reality is all about, where you're going, where you've come from. Are you going to meet a creator? Is there a creator? Has he got these superpowers? All those kind of questions. Doesn't mean he knows fuck all. It just means he knows how to do a certain ceremony, including these symbols that makes people go, oh, and they feel connected and they feel part of something and they feel like there's some kind of order in reality that makes them feel safe. That's what it connects back to that fear. You know, the clip you're saying about Peterson talking about fear. That's how Peterson's trapping him with that same religious bullshit of, oh, you're afraid of the big wide world, afraid of the big bad wolf. Then you need my God. My God's so fucking hard. All the wolves run away. You worship my God, there'll be no wolves in your life, guaranteed.
That's why that guy, he put a video up a little while ago saying that growing food is a political act. It's also a religious act.
Yeah.
It's also a religious act. Because once you understand the seasons and then you see the correspondence between the different religious ceremonies, and you know, it just puts you in touch with nature, which puts you in touch with the world above that and the world above that. The church itself, although the buildings are very beautiful, is a man-created world. So we're looking down from man at one with nature to what man can create, which is very rarely better than what nature can do.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's that delusion of separation, or the illusion of separation, but often they persuade people that it's a reality, so therefore it's a delusion. You're doing it to yourself. Yeah, but that concept that we are somehow separate from everything else, and we look down on, like you say, you know, we look down on it and we order the chaos. You know, it's like, all my berries have fell out my gathering basket. I'll bring them back together into the basket, into the order of the basket.
I was reading this blog on trees and trees as religious objects or whatever, you know. And anyway, on this one part, this woman's talking about how we need to go to the woodland and we need to find one particular tree and we need to visit it as often as possible and talk to it like a friend. I'm thinking, you know, I actually kind of do that kind of thing, but you've somehow got it wrong, love. Yeah, I can just tell reading from your post, yeah, that you're into this. You're still searching for something. You don't stand next to the tree with your hand on it and like feel a year's weather, the cold and hot, you know, and sort of you share what the tree is feeling, yeah, talking its language of hot and cold, you know, dry and wet, you know, and you actually understand it, become connected to it in a way, just for a few moments, just to know how it thinks, the way that you can know how a dog or a cat thinks. Yeah,
and you need to experience the environment that the tree is experiencing. I know you mentioned like the weather and stuff, but just what is around the tree, what is it part of?
I mean, I told you the other day I was in the woods, man. Oh Christ, I smoked too much, yeah. And I'm fucking laying there, and I could hear the trees singing, yeah. The trees were all singing, and as the sunlight hit the very tops of the leaves, they're all singing, blessings, blessings, blessings. That's what they were singing as the sunlight was hitting them. Yeah.
You sure it weren't all the little ants crowding around your ear hole?
No.
They were feasting on your earwax, going, "Oh, blessings!"
It was the tops of the trees, man. Really fucking nice. Yeah.
Yeah, man. I know what you mean.
I mean, even if I made up that thing, there was definitely some buzz that comes from the sun hitting the leaves. You know, they're shaking with the energy of it. Turning it into sap moving, you know, you lay there stunned, you can hear that, you know, and you can make up the closest word to what it sounds like. So, you know. Yeah,
that's part of that problem, isn't it? Because I was saying our problem, you know, I would find it difficult to accept that nobody suffers from this at some point in their life, if not being stuck in this kind of way of thinking and perception. But part of the problem of human beings and these classic kind of questions is we have the ability to abstract. We have the ability to extrapolate on an idea within a void, the void of our minds. Yeah. There's nothing in there until you start thinking about stuff and you populate it. Yeah. So it can be immensely, well, it is immensely beneficial to us. It's the main reason why we're able to do so much of the stuff that we've done and achieved and blah, blah, blah. But that variability is that sense of separation from the rest of nature. So the reason I was joining in and saying, yeah, what about the environment that the tree is in, is because we have that problem of we need to identify and individualize everything so that we can identify it, so that then we can create patterns of order relating to that thing. So you can't say wood from tree is good for fire if you don't first identify wood and tree and fire. Yeah, they'd be meaningless if you don't create those separations to enable you to build that plan in your head so that you can achieve having fire for the nighttime. So when you encounter something like that, and in particular, like when you're saying when you're just relaxing, enjoying the environment, you felt you could connect with those leaves, that you had a sense of perception that was merged with that environment, because you weren't thinking necessarily, I'm presuming a little bit, you weren't thinking necessarily of just one tree, one bush, you know, you were thinking of the environment as a whole. So it's one of the hurdles that for many people if they ever get past it, because the standard education system hammers this into our thinking, which is why we have what is commonly referred to as that kind of left brain thinking, where we need to use a very materialistic attitude to individuate and identify everything, and that separates that thing from the everything else. The tree does not exist in a void, yet we go up to it and say, that is a so-and-so tree, its dimensions are this, 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 and this. We isolate it so that we can give it an identification. But its reality is it's not separate at all. It wouldn't even exist if there wasn't the rest of that environment there for it to exist in. And this is something that affects our thinking endemically, because it's foundational to what gives us that ability to abstract and therefore plan, etc.
Well, creative thinking's been it's educated out of kids, because at a very early age, it's a very high percent of something like 4 or 5 year olds, or something like use about 80-90% of creative thinking, and by the time they get to about the age of 10, it drops to about 40%, and then by the time they get to about 12, it's gone to about 5% or something. So it's been educated out. This because that's what the education model is all about. You know, we present you this information, this is what it is, you remember it, you repeat it back, and you get a good score. But don't, you know, if you want to go and check any thing about it and put anything different in there, then you'll fail. So you have to follow the, you know, the model of what they're teaching you and their version of history and everything else, you know.
Yeah.
So creative thinking is, you know, it's gone by the time you've become a teenager, pretty much, or in some, sorry, not in all, but you know, in the majority, you know.
And a very good point on that. I mean, I was thinking as well, quoting Einstein, and I know some people have a difficulty with Einstein, but then, you know, some people have a difficulty with everybody. So whatever. Einstein said, imagination is more important than knowledge, because if, you know, that's the quote, but, you know, if you interpret that, you know, if you have imagination, you can figure things out as you go. You know, if you're lacking knowledge about something, your imagination will enable you to figure out that knowledge, and then you acquire the knowledge as well. So imagination is much more powerful than knowledge in itself. And knowledge is just like words in a book. The knowledge on its own does nothing. It just sits there. Yeah. Knowledge does not walk around the world going, hey, everyone, I'm knowledge, I'm going to build a pyramid. No, it's we built, well,
it's creating,
let's not get into that argument.
Well, I'd say it's creating a space to allow it to happen.
Yeah.
And that's what they're doing. They're co-creating it in a sense. So
it also made me think of, if you haven't seen it, I haven't managed to watch all the stuff he's uploaded recently because he's put a lot up. But one of the Corbett, I think it might have been on the Corbett Report extras. You know, the like backup channel he's got where he uploads the longer stuff that he does, the hour and a half or 2 hour long stuff or whatever. Anyway, he was talking to somebody about intellectual property rights. And to most people, that would sound like a really boring discussion. Yeah, they're talking about copyright law and intellectual property rights and stuff like that. And they were talking about it primarily because it's referencing the latest EU directives over copyright that is going to affect the internet quite severely. Yeah, and he's a stepping stone in this phase of censorship and surveillance state that they've been building for the last few years. But in that discussion, they talk about the reality that copyright laws and intellectual property actually stifles creativity. And there's been multiple studies and reports on this, that it is a reality. Doesn't matter what you would like to think, because the industries, the big players that monopolize the media, like, you know, the classic names, I'm not going to say them because potentially they could use that to shut this broadcast up, but I'm sure you can figure it out. Those big classic names that make the big blockbuster movies and whatever, yeah, they have dominated this environment such that they've persuaded people that as long as you protect their work, so in other words, you give them intellectual property rights and you allow them to have copyright on their product so that they can generate money out of the product, they will be the creative mind for you. So they'll keep pumping out the films and the songs and the comic books and whatever it is that their particular industry produces. And you don't have to be creative. They all do it for you, because intellectual property rights means they can earn money for what they're creating. So then they can sit there and create more. But the reality is, from all these studies, is that it actually constricts creativity because it makes it more limited. As we've developed into a world of having more and more knowledge, accumulated knowledge, you know, most people now have an entire library in their hand as they're walking down the road, and they're sat there watching shit on fucking YouTube. They've got a whole library there, and you want to watch shit with cats playing with balls of cotton or whatever. You know, maybe you just need a bit of relaxation, or shouldn't, you know, whatever. But the point being, they've persuaded people that this equals creativity, that copyright protection means that, you know, these people can be extra creative for all of us, whereas the reality is it constricts it, because the majority of things that we create are based on previous creations. So somebody takes one item and they sit and they look at it and they think, well, actually, if you just had this thing on the side here, now it's a something else. Now it has more functionality, or now it does a completely different job, you know? So that in particular, from what you were saying, you know, it's crucially important at the moment about people and the population's development, our global development. You know, I'm always talking about the global paradigm shift. This is exactly what's going on at the moment. People are at a point where we have to decide, we have to make a choice to go along with this system that will continue to funnel and narrow into such a control structure that it will become the absolute dystopian nightmare that you're all terrified of when you read the books and see the movies. It will, guaranteed. If you allow it to keep going down that direction, it will. But if you choose other directions, some of those things include things like the reality that, well, actually, if you drop all this bullshit about intellectual property and copyright laws, we would be 10 times more creative. Because how many people do you know who, for example, have been given a little bonus at work because they were working away on the job that they'd been taught how to do by somebody else? In other words, it wasn't from their own creative ability or imagination. They've been instructed to follow a sequence of orders to do their job, but they've sat there doing it and they've gone, hang on a minute, you know, they've used their creative thinking, their imagination. They've gone, hang on a minute, if I put my pen over there and I put that bit there, the whole process goes 10 times quicker. I'll tell my boss suggestions for the workplace. You do this, and the company makes billions in profits in the time that that employee's idea has saved them, and the employee gets £100 bonus, or a voucher to spend in a shop somewhere. Yeah, but that's an example of how the majority of our creativity happens on a regular, day-to-day basis in that kind of situation, where somebody's taking ideas from somewhere else and they're just altering them slightly, and all of a sudden you've got either a new product or more functionality, or it works better, stuff like that. So the very idea that creative thinking is detrimental because people think really weird shit and it's scary or it's chaotic or it might be something, disturbs the peace. Creative thinking is what brought us here in the first place. So you enjoy watching your YouTube videos and whatever. It's creative thinking that got us to the point where you could have that in front of you. I'm just banging on about certain points, but these, to me, they all connect back through that education system and, the points we've been talking about, stealing from children, keeping people childish, but at the same time restricting their cognitive abilities, their mental abilities, and convincing them that they are somehow a blight on the existence of everything else.
Yeah, it's interesting they're pushing this sort of narrative out there on Netflix all the time and these sort of streaming sites, because they've just uploaded something called I Am Mother. I don't know if you've seen that. That's,
I think I've seen the advert for it.
Yeah, well, I've watched that, and that was an agenda and a half going on there, pushing that the rope, the future you're talking about, the way they want it to go, the way we're heading.
You don't need to think, the algorithm will do it for you.
Yeah, the robot just there's 6, I think it's on, as it starts, I'll just tell you a little bit about it. They've got something like 60,000 of these embryos which they've stored in case there's some kind of, the earth ends, and so these robots then bring up these embryos, and that's how it goes from there. So
is that the script for Moonraker?
Probably,
wasn't that what he was doing on Moonraker? He got loads of, I know he got people to breed again, but I think he'd also got frozen embryos and stuff like that, and he was going to repopulate the planet after he'd killed everyone.
That's a good thing, Moonraker. Yeah. When you describe, if you can describe to somebody that the elites of plans, very much like Moonraker, and then remind them about the bit when he talks about genetic purity, he looks at old Steel Teeth with his little girlfriend with the pigtails and the big
Greta.
Greta and fucking
George
standing there, and they realise they're not genetically perfect. Yeah, they're not going to be a part of this club. Yeah. That's a good thing to remind police officers of, and the rest of that. Yeah, they're just using them.
Yeah, that is another good one. Actually, I was thinking about that the other night. I don't know why this had come back into my head for some reason. Probably something I heard someone say, but I was thinking, that classic reminder: if they eat their own, trying to get through to what can be called the enforcer class, that middle of the pyramid, where you can't get to the king in the castle because his castle is surrounded by knights in armor. It's that shield of the enforcers, the judiciary, the police, the military. They're the people that really, unfortunately to say, they perpetuate a lot of the problems in the system, because the very jobs they do require them to not speak out, to not, cause a fuss, to follow orders, to do as they're told, to stay in the formation. But really reminding them that this system, these people, they'll steal from children and they eat their own. Yeah, if you're useless or you're a danger to the system, they will destroy you, even if you were one of their members originally. Yeah, so you think you're doing, you're protecting yourself by joining the empire, using that kind of Star Wars analogy. Yeah, they'll kill you off just as easily. They'll kill the rest of us off. Yeah, if you prove to be difficult for them, or there's not enough rations to go round anymore, you don't think they'll kill themselves, do you? No, you'll die and they'll get the rations. They'll get the extra biscuit. You know, I know it sounds, again, I could bang on with caveat after caveat. Yeah, I know this stuff sounds dark and dystopia, nightmarish, blah, blah, blah. But that's the potentiality of where it can go if you don't see it for what it is. You know, you can't defeat this thing if you don't even see it as being the thing that it is in the first place. If you think it's innocuous, or worse, you think it's beneficial, then you don't stand a chance against it. It will use you up and pass, you know, spit you out, pass you out its backside after it's transmogrified you into something completely different.
Well, they think the price is worth it, as I said before. That was the quote, wasn't it?
They eat their own. So if they'll eat their own, do you think they really give a shit about you getting consumed in the fire? No, of course they don't.
I still want to remember that. There's a clue in the title, Peter. I am mother. Because they say that I am is one of those Salomon sayings, yeah? You see it a lot in the music industry, yeah? If you ever see something titled I am, or it's in the title of a song.
It comes from the Bible, primarily, from Judeo-Christian theology.
Yeah,
one of the names for God is just I am. I am that is that. I am that which I am.
Yeah, and the Satanists say that, you know, they can be godlike, so they all start saying I am. No, yeah. I am a giant. La 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 la. Fucking idiot.
I forgot to mention wax my balls. This week I'm mostly translitigatory. Because I've realised, after the example of what's going on in Canada at the moment, that if you want to earn some big money, just pretend that you're transgender and then put yourself in a situation where you can claim that you're offended by somebody's actions and words, whatever, and then you take them to court and you sue them for fuckloads of money. And at the moment, it looks like that's what the guy's succeeding in doing in Canada, the current case that's going through the news mill. But I was saying to the guys before we started broadcasting, it's an unfortunate but a good example of how a lot of the legislation in many countries has now become so twisted by some of this new politically correct bullshit that's getting pushed on people, that somebody who is just more than likely just a con man can put a dress on, slap a bit of makeup on, go in a shop somewhere, and when the shopkeeper goes, "Oh, mate, get the fuck out," you can go, ma'am, I'm offended. That's 20 grand, please. I'm going to take you to court and sue you because you've offended me. This is the stage we've got to, yeah? And that's that chaos churn that they're deliberately generating, where you will either fall into the order that they're offering, which is this dystopian New World Order technocracy, or you will go the opposite direction. You'll start looking for some other kind of order to connect to, yeah? Because you're just seeing this chaos going on, which is why, you know, like I said, there's a lot of people turning to God again, stuff like that.
Yeah, you know, yeah, I was thinking that the vacuous stuff that's about, and eventually they just become, like you say, looking for something, instead of that connection to themselves, which, you know, they haven't been told or taught, or they think that's all just nonsense. And it's and it has been deliberately, you know, like I say, the New Age has created that kind of stuff. You know,
I think it's I don't want to. I'm tempted to say it's the critical fulcrum point. But I think that's maybe that, you know, that's debatable. I'm sure there's a lot of people who think about this kind of stuff who have a lot to say on the point, the fulcrum point, yeah. But that ability of ours to be able to abstract, you know, you don't suddenly develop that when you're a certain age. That's with you from the beginning in this life. And these people a long time ago have figured that out about us, about people. Yeah, they've realised, you know, maybe they've thought for themselves, they've introspected and thought, oh, well, where did my shit come from? Oh, it's this kind of something, this, that, and this, and they figured out that is a fulcrum point where they begin the manipulation from. You know, I'm tempted to say kind of like foundational in the process of twisting people into this sense of separation. So right from an early age, you begin your experience of life with, you know, maybe you're not really aware of what it is. You know, if you can define it as a singular thing, you're not really aware of its effect when you're a kid, you know, when you're a child, because you're just doing life. You know, you're learning what life is, let alone what this thing is in the back of your mind that's like, hey, I'm abstract nothingness, I'm the void, I'm the emptiness that is going to plague you for your entire life. Yeah. But because of that element within us, the system knows that that's a manipulation point within people, within human beings, within mankind. And they learned that a long time ago, and ever since they've been working towards this structure that will enable them to stick a crowbar in there and basically keep encouraging people to go separate until they think their reflection in the mirror is more real than they are. Their image on a screen is more real than they are, or the idea they've got in their head of, oh, I'll put a dress on, I'll put some lipstick on, I'm a woman now, I'm a woman, I am, and they convince themselves of that separation. Yeah. Sorry, I'm ranting again.
No, you're not.
Maybe. Sorry, go on.
I think a lot of it is being in the moment. That's the first step to being able to think abstractly, properly.
Yeah.
And the other kind of intellect is the kind of intellect that Jordan Peterson is sort of talking to. Those people who have intelligence, but they can't be in the moment. Those people that have incredible intelligence, graduate students and that, who could one of them is going to be like a million monkeys. They're going to go through all the textbooks and they're actually going to come around the back and find the right answer.
Yeah.
But they're not living in the moment, with consciousness, conscious of their own. Because if you're conscious of yourself in the moment, nothing outside of you is ever more than 50% of you, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
And these people are convinced that something out there is going to make you so much better, it's so much bigger than you, and you'll be able to eat it for dinner and become like it. And so they're chasing something outside of themselves.
Yeah.
You have to realise that you might not be happy, but you've got about, you should have at least 3/4 of what you need to be happy already. And you only need a little bit of something from outside of yourself, if you see what I mean, yeah?
Yeah.
Because they're all chasing something. Yeah, and that's what keeps them out of themselves, apart from themselves. Yeah. But just finding yourself isn't like just sitting and meditating and saying, "Oh, what an idiot I was chasing after things all this time." No, it's about 75% of yourself that you find.
Sorry, I just see you're making me wonder whether the creative element is what, for a lot of people, helps them fill in that void. I know it always has done for me, even though it took me half my life before I started to have these kind of realizations and sort of see this kind of perspective on what's going on in my own head. But because I've been always fairly creative in one way or another, whether it be music or messing about with art or messing about on the computer, stuff like that. Yeah. And it's that, is the creative mind, or the mind that's encouraged to be creative, more balanced because they have the creative ability to basically fill in the void. So you have this abstract space in your head that enables you to extrapolate, but that abstractness, that empty void, gives you like there's like an old Ethiopian legend about why people are always hungry, because they've got the void in them, which is their belly. It's in their belly, and that's why they're always looking for food. But in the same way is your mind doing that same process. So if you have a good imagination, if you are encouraged in your creative abilities, then you are less likely to be unbalanced by that sense of emptiness, because you can always fill that emptiness. I talked recently about, I know I've talked about this before, but I mentioned it, I think last week, the daydreaming, stuff like that. Kids are told that's a bad thing now, whereas to me, it's, no, let them daydream. I know, if they were having genuine education, then obviously they should also be able to get on with their work and whatever. But one of the lessons should be creative thinking, daydreaming. You want to sit and stare out the window? Tell me what you were thinking about. Tell me a story that's just been going through your head. Yeah, because that
Cookie,
creative.
they don't want that. They don't want that, Cookie. That's what he's saying.
No, but
Yeah.
that again means that a creative mind can potentially design something or come up with an idea, a methodology, a concept that would enable them to be in some way a threat to the system. So they don't want you to be creative unless they have control of that creativity. Hence the music industry, the movie industry, the celebrity culture, which isolates and controls that entire environment, or largely. I know there's a lot of subculture, pirate radio and stuff like that, but when it comes to talking about the system wants to appropriate your creative energy and make it safe for itself. Whereas you encourage creative thinking, and people become a threat to the system because you can use your own imagination to figure shit out.
I stared out of the window quite a lot. Yeah,
so did I.
Quite a lot, right? And now that will be deemed attention deficit disorder or something of that nature. Yeah, for you not paying attention, you've got a problem. You can't, you're not disciplined enough. So they then put a mental health, mental case on you in that sense. They call it it's a problem. It's not a problem. It's just what some people do, and it's how kids grow up. But they now want to get in there, and like you say, make everyone. It seems to have this something on the scale, something on that.
Yeah, they want you to have more of the void. And the fear that comes out of that void, because you fear the unknown. Everybody does.
Well, it's kind of scary when you live in a country right now where, there's a story today about the, I think it was human rights group Liberty took the government to court over this Snoopers Charter. I don't know if you saw that today.
No, I didn't.
And they said it was unlawful for something like bulk hacking, but it was deemed lawful by the Mr. Justice, Lord Justice, whatever he is called.
Lord No Justice.
Yeah, Justice, Mr. Justice.
Or is it Justice?
Yes. Yeah. And basically, this is what's been happening. This is what's happening right now. The government will collect all your data, your intimate data, including any individual's internet browsing history, the apps users have downloaded to their phone, usernames and passwords, cell site data that can pinpoint the person's location at a given time. So this is stuff that they've been doing for a long time anyway, but and this is the type of stuff they're doing. They're listening, they want to know everything we're thinking, saying, all the rest of it. And because most people are linked in that sense to the internet, via the social medias and everything of this nature, we've said for many years now how they use this. This is then used in their supercomputer type environments, and they can crunch this data. They can put even suggestions into these supercomputers and come up with scenarios in and come up with how things could move if, say, for instance, we were going to get the mood of the nation at the moment is it's very whatever, and they've been doing this a while, and I think that's how it's come out with the manipulation of the individual through the Facebook social media stuff, through Cambridge Analytica.
It's game theory applied to computer technology via the internet. We've been talking about this stuff for a long time, and now they're getting to the stage where the infrastructure is near enough complete that they can do that. Where Bojo could be sat in his office and go, tell us what the people think about so-and-so point that I want to say tomorrow. And they'll do a quick search and the algorithms will compute what we all feel about it. Because using game theory via the accumulation of data that they're getting via all this social media, Internet of Things connectivity, that's going to give them the data the algorithm needs to run through its game theory equations and go, most likely probability will be this. People don't realize just how fundamental it's going to be within their lives and how fundamentally it will affect their lives.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the stuff is it just sounds so sci-fi. You know, it sounds like such a movie script that as it's been going over the past few years, you know, now how often is it that you happen to be talking to somebody and they'll make a comment along the lines of, oh, it's so crazy today, you know, things are so crazy today. And I don't mean just old people complaining about the young people kind of shit. I mean, just anyone in general. And they make some kind of passing comment to how things are crazy these days compared to how they used to be. That's that chaos that they're generating, so people will cling to the order they're offering. And the kind of subtle invasion into your data is giving them like an X-ray view of your thinking. They can analyze it using so many different computer algorithms running game theory and shit like that, yeah, they might not know 100%, because that's the thing with game theory, it's about probabilities. Yeah, and it sort of categorizes probabilities so that you can plan out, you know, do I bet on black on the roulette table or do I bet on green 0? Yeah, and it will give you the probabilities. The most likely result would be this or this or this. Yeah. But they will fine tune that. The more data it has input into it, the more accurate it will be. That's always been the key, the volume of data. So stuff like that, where it's been revealed that they are en masse just hoovering up your data en masse, whether it's illegal or not, they don't give a fuck, because they either use workarounds, like they get the Americans to monitor us and we monitor the Americans, or Australia does it, or whatever, the Five Eyes, so that they can claim plausible deniability, or they just do it anyway because they know when it comes down to it, Lord Justice will rule in their favour anyway.
Exactly.
Because the key is they don't really give a fuck about you and what you care about and what your choices are. All they've been told is that we must complete this infrastructure, and we need that data, we need that accumulated data to feed into this infrastructure, so our new technocratic system will, you know, chug and do its thing.
A 5G planet with broadband connection, satellite version as well, all in space and on the ground. Nowhere to hide, no internet free zones.
It made me wonder as well, I know a lot of the stuff is done by automated systems and a system flagging priorities and stuff like that, but there are humans at certain stages, you know, certain gateways will have a human operator that actually looks at the thing on the computer. It might be looking at your Facebook page, or a produced synopsis of your internet footprint from a different program, stuff like that.
I wonder what it makes of this cookie, you know.
It's just making me think, like, there must be so many more of those people doing that kind of work now. Does it become like Coronation Street for them? Because surely they must be spending hour upon hour upon hour listening to just the general chatter, the day-to-day run-of-the-mill stuff that people do and talk about and interact over.
Yeah.
So they must be sat there, like, you know, with the popcorn, you know, this is like Coronation Street, way, you know, like they're watching a crazy soap opera or something. And doesn't that make them think, like, what the fuck is going on here? We got people watching people watching people watching people. You know, I ranted about that
reality
program, yeah, where they got a video looking at people who are watching a TV program.
Yeah,
and I'm like, so you've got a mirror facing a mirror facing a mirror.
That's where the entertainment's gone now. You're the entertainment. It goes into your house and says what you think of the entertainment. Yeah, it is. It's
you're watching somebody who's watching somebody else, and you're all reacting to each other's.
And you become famous for it, and you end up on I'm a Celebrity bullshit shite or whatever it is.
Yeah.
You know?
That was a science fiction book that I read once. Yeah, where you literally had the upper middle class. Yeah, watching sort of, you know, soap operas of their, you know, lower class, the workers, yeah, But the ones at the very top, they didn't bother watching that. They was out of the opera. They was at the stage. You know, they was going to plays.
They don't watch television. They don't watch any of that stuff.
Yeah.
It's just for us to get daft and silly. I mean, the TV is let's just mention this as well. You know, the TV, and more I suppose the screen in general, but certainly TV programming. And when people live a life around a program like that, you know, or they've become so used to it. It's more, I'd say, maybe it's dying out a bit now because more maybe the older generation, if you're over 40, maybe, you know, it's more TV for that sort of generation. Maybe under that age, it's more the internet and the screen. But, you know, the TV for me still has, you know, that's where most of the propaganda is. When you do watch TV and you have dived in having your cookie a few times when you've been places, you've seen this, you know, and I've seen it as well. So you see it really heavily laid on thick, certainly on certain programs that they'll put out there. And they all end up on these iPlayers, by the way. So you are still seeing it. And whatever, you know, streaming service the commercial channels run, they all run one, don't they? So they put all their junk on there as well. So I'm sure people do watch it still in a sense, but because they're on the internet saying, I don't watch telly. It's like, well, that's it's like, well, that's the kind of programming they're putting on TV, which ends up on the internet. So
semantically, I don't watch television because I don't watch a TV box as it's broadcast to air by the different channels. I watch TV programming, but by my selective choice, and I don't use the standard platforms. I go to the internet and I say, oh, I want to watch so and so, and when they come up, I go, yeah, I'll watch that one. And there's no adverts, none of that bullshit, you know, because I use an ad blocker and whatever else. And to me, that's video media. So I'm consuming video media. To me, it's not watching television. It's not the same thing.
No, because when you put the TV on, I'm talking about the sort of situation where you'll have, you know, the TV on all the time. You know, it's just on. You know, people just have it on. And
you don't have a choice on the sequence of programs that they plan out for you. What I'm describing is I have a choice. I go and if I'm in the mood to watch something, I go and I think, I want to look at this. I look for that particular thing and I watch that particular thing. I don't have to sit there like I used to years ago, where you're flicking through all the channels going, oh, this is all shit, this is all shit, this is all shit. Oh, I'll watch this shit because at least this shit isn't quite as shit as the other shit.
Yeah. Well, people get sucked into morning TV and afternoon TV, don't they, with all that shite. They're
the worst for the agendas. I mean, the ones I'm really
coffee-flavoured shit.
Like this old Catalan lady that I go and visit, they're in her late 70s, yeah? I mean, I feel really sorry for her because she's stuck on the television, yeah? And every channel is programming. And it must be so different from what she grew up watching in the 60s, 70s, 80s, even. But it began to change. And a lot of old people are like that, yeah? They must just be sitting there confused by what's on television. And then, you know, they never learned how to use the internet properly. Yeah? Or, you know, they can't afford it. So they just keep watching that programming. Oh, it's horrible.
I wonder whether part of the reason why here in the UK, obviously, they decided to take the free TV license off the pensioners, whether one of the reasons from doing that was because they considered the potential of a generation of pensioners, maybe not every one of them, but a good large number of them, turning round and going, what the fuck is this shit you're putting on our TV? What is this bullcrap you're pushing into our kids' heads? Because a pensioner will have 60 years probably of lifespan, of lifetime, to have grown up around TV and see, like you say, see how it's changed, how it's progressed. So a pensioner will be sitting there flicking through going, I can't believe they're showing that on the TV. You know, at the moment, surely that breaks the law from, I mean, if you've seen some of the kind of like sexualized content and whatever that they show now, it's like, how are they getting away with showing that on TV? That's softcore porn. Yeah, you can almost see the action. It's like it's a fraction of a millimeter away from being hardcore porn, but they're showing it on national TV. A pensioner with that life experience has more likelihood to turn around and go, hang on a minute, what's this? Because they've had life experience to see through some of that stuff. I know for many of them, they've had a lifetime of indoctrination, so therefore all they want to see is their favorite indoctrination. Yeah, but the potential for them to see through the programming and the propaganda would be higher, I think, because of their lifetime experience.
I remember that video. I just seen Jeff C in the chat, and it reminded me of that Canadian video where the people were coming out against Trudeau. Do you remember? An old French woman. And I mean,
yeah. Was it Hostings or something?
Yeah, a lot of the people supporting her were the older people. Yeah, who've seen these changes coming, and I'm not happy with them.
Yeah. So in the same sense as like a lot of the kind of political movement stuff that they've tried to push out in recent years, I know some of them have connected very well with the older generation, like the fracking campaigns. There was supposedly more pensioners turning up to people those protests than there were younger people. But that's the kind of thing I'm pointing at. Maybe this is more to do with not like BBC funding itself and all that kind of malarkey, or even the political excuses of like, oh, the government are making us do it because they're not giving us enough money and shit like that. But this is about restricting the number of eyeballs on their programming that could potentially disagree or see through the programming and bring it out as in a comment or whatever to the people around them. So, you got a family watching something on the TV that is saturated with political bullshit, and it'll be the grandma or granddad sat in the room that will turn and go, that can't be right, that's bullshit, that's that guy when he was 20 in politics was doing this. That's a lifetime experience. They don't want that. And add into that the way they've encouraged families to separate and fragment because everybody's got their own TV or their device, so they're all in their own little corner. Even if they're sat in the same room, they're all in their own little bubble. So granddad's watching the football on the TV, everybody else in the room is all in their own little bubble, so they don't give a fuck what granddad says. They ain't listening.
No,
Maybe it's more to do with that kind of manipulation of the people who have a higher probability of seeing through their shit.
Yeah.
Sorry, rant over. So I'll say hello to the chat room. Hi, Jeff. I'm glad you jumped in the chat room for a bit. Hope you're all right. I hope you've been watching the craziness with the court case in Canada. Wax my balls. I'm laughing about it because it is just so ridiculous. But yeah, that's serious. If they get that through in his favour, that shows just how fucked their legal system has become. But I will scroll back up through the chat. See how far it goes because it does go all the way back to the beginning. Cool. So I've got the whole chat in the chat box tonight. So I'll scroll down a little bit and see where did I get to. I know I said hello to you. Cannabis Space Life Form, hello. Michael Allen, hello. And I'm going to try and scroll down fairly quickly. So I apologize, like I always do. If I miss you out, it's not because I'm not reading your name out. It's just because I'm missing it, scrolling down too fast. Cherish Rosin, hello. And I'll try and, if you've got questions or anything, chuck them in the chat room now. I'll try and skim read through stuff in case there's any other questions previously as I'm scrolling down the chat. The Webster Report, hello Webby. Hope you're all right, mate. Thanks for jumping in. Go and check his channel out, The Webster Report. Talking to various people who look at this kind of stuff like we're often ranting about here. Give him some support as he's starting building up the channel, trying to keep it moving in this current environment where basically you're going against the wind at the moment in this YouTube environment.
If anybody's about Wednesday, there's no show from Peter, but
no.
I will try to put into the Skype at least, a link, and I'll put it up on my Twitter. There's an interview with a guy from the Yellow Vests being done by this Dutch girl, and she only speaks English and Dutch, so it should be in English, and she'll be putting it out on her live stream. So she's normally in Toulouse every week, following the marches there, She's got to the point where she knows the difference between the 3 different cops that run the operations. Yeah, so one week it's a woman who causes a lot of violence, but you know sometimes there's one guy from the gendarmerie. He doesn't cause much violence. Yeah, but like the other 2 people, if they're in charge, they do. You know, it isn't going away. Nobody's going to stop that yellow vest thing. Yeah, but they keep misreporting it in the press. In France, anyway, they demonise the fuck. So,
hello. Sorry, bud.
So yeah, I'll put a link in on Wednesday night. That should be worth a watch. Yeah.
Okay, cool, man. Thank you.
Cheers, Gary. Thanks.
Gary Ord, hello. 360 people watching a live broadcast of a bloke called White Van Man eating hot chili crisps. Yeah, that's YouTube. Videos of people reacting to other people's reacting to other people's reacting to other people's reacting to other. Yeah, you could just go on and on and on. It's like a kaleidoscope. Yeah, that's the Tesseract again, the Tesseract effect, keeping you trapped in a wilderness of mirrors. Paula B, hello.
Yeah, but if that original reverberation was a bit sick, all the reactive reverberations are going to be sick as well. And this leads into what you were saying about creativity. You know, once you realise that you're 70% happiness, and you realise how much rubbish out there is, there's almost an obligation to create, because you can produce something better than what they're doing.
Yeah.
And
well, like I say,
adding to reality, not taking away, not just consuming. So
I was going to say they can take away the hangout, you know, but we'll still come and we'll do it another way. We'll still do it. They won't stop us doing what we're doing and putting it on their platform.
Robert Smith, hello. Hola. James Owen, hello. Oh, you came out of lurking before the end of the show. Is it a full moon tonight or something? Scrolling down, I know I saw. Oh, yeah, it was. I saw a question mark earlier, and I was thinking, yeah, I'm sure there's a question there that somebody asked, and then I've just scrolled down and seen it. So, were you a porn star, Cookie? No. I suppose you could be semantic in what do you mean by star? Yeah. Did I star in something? Yes. Am I a star? No. If I was, you could probably buy it off the shelf in some, back street shop somewhere, some adult shop. I did sort of get involved a little bit, yes, but nah. Not interested in that industry. It is as bad as you may suspect it is. It is an entrapment. It doesn't need to be that way. There's nothing wrong with sex. There's nothing bad or abnormal about sex or erotic thoughts. Nothing bad about that. This is not the guilt kind of shit that you need, but what they have turned it into, what it has become, because it is all about making money and power. The recent Epstein case being a brilliant example of this. How do you manipulate people with power? Use their voices and sex and perversions to do with sexual congress. Yeah, it's a major voice that you can manipulate people with. And it is as bad as you think it is. So I sort of, I bounced off it quite rapidly. I'm glad I got away from it. I think the silliest thing was I was offered a job in Germany in a gay bar. I'm not gay, I'm straight, but somebody thought, do you mind dancing in front of other guys? And I thought, no, I wouldn't give a shit, mate. So I could get you tons of money, send you over to Germany and dance in one of the dance bars. But no, you're right. It's like, I'm not embarrassed in that sense. When he said to me, do you mind dancing? He said, no, I'm not embarrassed. But when he's like, dancing in a gay bar, you're like, nah, you're right. No, that'd just be too bad, too much. Gas mask, hello. Yeah, you'd need a gas mask. Yeah. But it's been turned into as well an entrapment for a lot of young people, not just women, not just girls, boys, men as well. If anything, the men get treated worse than the women. I know that sounds counterintuitive considering the state of pornography in recent years. There is an immense amount of extreme shit that gets done under the guise of pornography. And a lot of the time the men get treated worse than the women. And it's been offered. It's one of those things where, like I was talking about earlier, they don't necessarily say it directly, but it's implied and it's suggested and it's encouraged within your cultural norms of society. So you might know a woman that works in a strip club or a dance bar or something like that, yeah, or a guy who does the full Monty show kind of stuff. Or even, you know, not necessarily that kind of dance thing. It could just be like, I'm a waitress, where you're expected to wear a sexy costume and shit like that. Sex is a natural part of life. So some buggers came along many, many years ago and commercialized the fuck out of it. And now they've turned it into a psychological, spiritual destruction tool as well. So it just literally chews people up and there ain't even anything left to spit out. Yeah. All about controlling power and generating money. But there is... sorry, I just realised I'd managed to scroll all the way down to the bottom and it'd done its jump thing again when the chat box had caught up. But there is nothing wrong with sex, being sexual, being erotic, being sensual, being loving in a physical way. There's nothing wrong with that. They just applied all this shit to it, so it becomes unhealthy, it becomes detrimental, it becomes destructive, it's caustic. So reclaim your sexuality. From a genuine, natural perspective, reclaim your sexuality. You feel like you're feeling a bit that kind of spring March hair effect. You want to dress up in a sexy fashion, you go for it. For many years, and I still piss some women off with this, but for many, many years I've had the attitude that if you wear a low-cut dress and you've got a nice chest and you've got an attractive cleavage, I will probably look at it. I will more than likely look at it, and dependence on the situation, I might say thank you. Yeah, because I've done this many times in the past. We encountered a woman in a club or whatever, and they got the big low cut, I said big, deep plunging neckline with loads of cleavage. They got the Wonder Bra on, so they're like up here, and you look and you're, oh, thanks, love. And they're like, what are you, oh, how dare you, how dare you, how dare you? So why have you got them out then? Why are you walking around with that cleavage on display if you don't want anyone to actually look at it? And at least I'm being honest with you, and I'm saying I see it for what it is and I appreciate it. Thank you. Doesn't mean I'm going to jump on you. If anything, it says quite the opposite, because I've made a point of pointing it out. Thanks, love.
There are some women who try to use it as a browbeat.
Yes.
They'll look you in the eyes, and if your eyes drop, that's it. You drop in their eyes. Yeah, and now they're beating you. They've got the browbeat.
You do the same to them. You watch women, and people say, "Oh, you're pervert watching women." See, when you're just people watching, and you watch them look at men's crotches and their asses.
Yeah,
guaranteed. Both sexes are just as bad as each other when it comes to that kind of desire and sense of need and fulfillment. It's not men are sexual abusers and women are poor, victims of that abuse. No. They both do it. Yeah, we both look for that kind of stuff. There's nothing wrong with that.
That's how the programming into hierarchy and authority displays itself in women. They're looking to control the situation. Yeah. So that's how that comes about.
Yeah.
I think.
I know
Cookie, I'm gonna have to do one in a minute, so I'll just let you know.
Yeah,
I'm
gonna wind up in a minute anyway, because it's 10 past 10, isn't it? So I was just gonna say, sorry, I know that was a bit of a tangent digression, but it's because I'd seen that one question. Dude, were you a porn star? If I was, then I want to know where my commission is. Where's my royalty fees? I think I said hello.
I don't think I've ever seen a story of a porn star that comes out happy. I mean, I remember the story about that woman. Do you remember who had a kid? And then she died, and there was two guys fighting over who was the father of it. Did you ever see the videos of her when she was pregnant? And she had all this makeup on. And some guy is literally just sitting there, her boyfriend is literally just taking the piss out of her. She says, "Oh, you look like something you're on a mushroom trip." And she goes, "What's one of them?" I mean, she was as thick as shit. She really was, yeah. You just felt sorry for the woman. Yeah,
I don't think I've seen it.
Must have had her on drugs. Blonde-haired one. You know the one I mean, don't you? There was a big case about whose child it was that she had. You know, she had the child, and a few years later, I think she died. And she had a big estate because she really was a porn star. Yeah, she had millions in her name. And these two guys came up trying to compete to see who was the father of the kid. Yeah? Oh, Nicole something.
Nicole Kidman.
No.
She's still alive.
Nicole somebody. Something in the chat or not.
Oh, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't remember that at all. But anyway, Hugh McMahon, hello. And Nazi Naz, hello. I think I said hello to everyone. So scrolling down now. Yeah. Okay. Well, this was the last episode. Now going into the 27 Club, the last episode of the Hangouts on Air. So doing it this way, using the Google Hangout function as connected to YouTube, that's the end of it. This is the last one. That doesn't mean it's the last time we will broadcast. It's not the last episode of Sol Excalibre. We will be back in one way or another. We'll figure out another way of doing it, or we'll pre-record it or whatever. It might not, well, actually, yeah, that's a point. I won't be doing a broadcast next week. Definitely won't be doing a broadcast next week. And after that, it may take a week or so for me to figure stuff out and set stuff up and see how best I can do however we're going to do it. So if there's a couple of weeks or even 3 weeks or whatever gap, don't worry. Yeah, it will be back. We'll figure something out to do. So yeah, it's not the end. It's just this format is done because they're taking it off us. So thank you for joining in. Thank you for coming and joining in the chat. For the people that wanted to join in the chat, thank you. And thanks to everyone giving us your attention for more than a couple of hours tonight. We've been rambling a fair bit. Yeah, hopefully we've talked about some stuff that you might find helpful. And, you know, don't fear the chaos. Work through the fear. You will find an order, because there is order everywhere. It's not dominated by one group or one person, one individual claiming authority over it. It's everywhere. It's part of nature. It's the natural creativity of this reality. You can reconnect with that. It's not all separation. It's not all doom and gloom. So, you know, use your creative mind. Maybe, you know, spend a bit of time daydreaming, looking out the window and enjoying the scenery, or like Go was saying, go and sit in the scenery, listen to the trees for a bit, enjoy nature and large cleavages. Yes. So
that was Nicole Smith, and this was the guy who put the video up, Howard K. something.
Oh, right, okay.
And I could probably find it on YouTube in about 3 minutes. And Nicole Smith.
That's enough, thank you. It's a good indictment of modern society. So there you go. It's a good way to end the show. Thanks again, folks. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, Cookie. Thanks everyone in the chat as well. Cheers.
Thanks to jumping in and chatting. I'll say, well, I better shut up and press the button, hadn't I? And then I can type thanks in the chat. Trying to do too many things at once, getting them back to front. So yeah, thanks again, folks. See you soon. Enjoy the sunshine. Press the button.